The storm's gift. The rain pounded against the windshield like an angry drummer, making Nora Patel squint through the downpour as she drove home. After 12 hours of case management at Riverside Children's Services, all she wanted was her apartment, a hot cup of tea, and the mystery novel waiting on her nightstand. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the empty streets of Evergreen Heights. Empty, except for a small figure huddled against a bus stop bench. Nora's foot eased off the accelerator. The silhouette was too small to be an adult. Her social worker instincts kicked in before her brain could process what she was seeing. She pulled over, grabbing her umbrella from the back seat. "Hello?" she called, approaching cautiously. A little boy, no older than 5 or 6, looked up with wide, frightened eyes. He was soaked to the bone, his dinosaur backpack clutched against his chest like a shield. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The boy shook his head, lower lip trembling. Nora crouched down, holding the umbrella over both of them. "My name is Nora. I help children. Can you tell me your name?" After a moment of hesitation, he whispered, "Theo." "Theo, that's a wonderful name. Are you lost?" A small nod. "Would you like to come somewhere dry while we figure out how to find your family?" Another nod, more decisive this time. Nora offered her hand, and after studying it carefully, Theo took it. His fingers were ice cold. At the police station, Officer Jimenez took down what little information they had. Theo wouldn't or couldn't explain how he'd ended up alone at the bus stop. He only said his last name was Harding and that he lived in the big house with the blue door. No missing child reports matched his description. No address in the system matched a Harding family with a blue door. "We'll keep looking," Jimenez assured her. "But social services is swamped tonight because of the flooding. The emergency placement homes are full." Nora knew what that meant. Theo would spend the night in the precinct's break room, confused and frightened, until someone could take his case in the morning. She made a decision that surprised even herself. "I'm a certified foster parent and licensed social worker," she said, pulling out her credentials. "I can take him for tonight." The paperwork took an hour, but soon Nora was unlocking her modest 2-bedroom apartment with Theo trailing behind her. She'd kept the second bedroom for her occasional fostering duties, though it had been months since she'd had a placement. "Are you hungry, Theo?" she asked, switching on the lights. He nodded, eyes taking in the warm space with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in framed children's artwork, gifts from kids she'd helped over the years. Nora heated soup and made grilled cheese sandwiches, watching as Theo slowly relaxed enough to take small bites. After dinner, she found an old t-shirt that worked as a nightgown for him and helped him wash up. "Just for tonight," she explained, as she tucked him into the twin bed with fresh sheets. "Tomorrow we'll find your family. Promise?" His voice was small but clear, the first word he'd spoken since the police station. "I promise," Nora said, meaning it with all her heart. That night, she called her supervisor, Josephine, explaining the situation. "Always bringing your work home." Josephine sighed, but there was affection in her voice. "I'll check the missing persons database again in the morning, and I'll contact the surrounding counties." After hanging up, Nora checked on Theo once more. He was sleeping soundly, his small hand clutching the edge of the blanket. Something about his face, the delicate slope of his nose, the thick eyelashes, seemed almost familiar, though she knew they'd never met before. 3 days later, Theo was still with her. Despite expanded searches and inquiries to neighboring districts, no one had reported a missing boy matching his description. He'd begun to speak more, telling Nora about his toys and a dog named Pepper, but nothing that helped locate his family. Each night, Nora would read him stories until he fell asleep, and each morning, she'd wake to find him sitting on the living room rug, carefully drawing pictures of a house with a blue door. On the 4th day, just as Nora was preparing dinner with Theo helping by tearing lettuce leaves for a salad, someone knocked on her door. Wiping her hands, she peeked through the peephole to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in an expensive-looking coat, his dark hair slightly damp from the light drizzle outside. "Can I help you?" she called through the door. "My name is Darius Harding," the man replied, his deep voice tinged with urgency. "I believe you found my nephew." The arrival Nora felt her pulse quicken as she opened the door. The man standing before her was imposing, well over 6 feet tall with shoulders that filled the doorframe. His charcoal suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, but it was his eyes that captured her attention. Dark amber, intense, and rimmed with exhaustion. "How did you find us?" she asked, positioning herself protectively in the doorway. "I've been searching everywhere," Darius Harding said, his voice softening. "The police finally called this morning. They said you were caring for Theo." His gaze moved past her into the apartment. Is he all right?" Before Nora could answer, a small voice called out from behind her, "Uncle Dari!" Theo rushed past her legs and threw himself at the man. Darius dropped to one knee, gathering the boy into a fierce embrace, his composed facade crumbling as he pressed his face into Theo's hair. "Thank God," he whispered, so quietly Nora almost didn't hear it. She invited him inside, professional caution warring with the obvious relief on both their faces. Darius explained as Theo showed him the drawings he'd made. "My brother Julian and his wife died in a car accident last year," he said, accepting the cup of tea Nora offered. "I became Theo's guardian, but I travel constantly for work. 4 days ago, my housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, was watching him while I attended an emergency board meeting. Apparently, Theo slipped out when she was gardening. She thought he was napping." He rubbed his face. "I've been out of my mind with worry." "Why wasn't a police report filed?" Nora asked, the social worker in her still skeptical. "It was, immediately." Darius pulled out his phone, showing her multiple reports and news stories. "But it was filed in Oak Ridge County, not here. Theo must have climbed into a delivery truck or something to travel so far." Nora checked the reports. They matched his story. Her professional wariness began to ease, especially seeing how Theo clung to Darius's side, chattering about the cookies they'd baked and the stories Nora had read him. "You've been so kind to him," Darius said, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected vulnerability. "I don't know how to thank you." "It's what anyone would do," she replied, though they both knew that wasn't true. As evening approached, Nora helped pack Theo's few belongings. The boy hugged her fiercely. "Can Miss Nora visit us?" he asked his uncle. "She makes the best pancakes." Darius looked at Nora thoughtfully. "She's welcome any time," he said, then added more directly to her, "Actually, I'd like to properly thank you. Perhaps dinner this weekend? I know a wonderful restaurant that's really not necessary," Nora interrupted, suddenly conscious of her simple apartment and the vast differences in their worlds. "Please," Darius said. "Theo would love to see you again, and so would I." Something in his earnest expression made Nora hesitate, then nod. "All right, but nothing fancy." 3 days later, Darius's driver collected her from her apartment. Instead of a 5-star restaurant, she was surprised when they arrived at a charming community garden with picnic tables. Theo raced to greet her, and Darius stood nearby with a picnic basket, looking oddly nervous in casual clothes. "Theo mentioned you love outdoor spaces," he explained. "I hope this is okay?" The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Nora more than any expensive dinner could have. They spent the afternoon eating sandwiches, helping Theo identify butterflies and talking. Darius spoke of taking over his family's tech company after his brother's death, of raising Theo alone, and the challenges of balancing it all. Nora found herself sharing, too, about growing up in foster care herself, her determination to improve the system, and her small victories and heartbreaks at work. As sunset painted the sky in amber and rose, watching Theo chase fireflies while Darius laughed beside her, Nora realized something was shifting between them, something unexpected and fragile and potentially wonderful. "Would you like to come to dinner next week?" she heard herself asking. "At my place? Nothing fancy, but I make a pretty good lasagna." Darius's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "We'd love that more than anything." Shadows of the past, over the next 2 months, Nora's life transformed in ways she never anticipated. Weekly dinners became twice weekly, then almost daily phone calls. Darius brought Theo to the Children's Museum, where she volunteered on weekends. She helped them pick out goldfish for Theo's bedroom. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Nora lived paycheck to paycheck in her modest apartment, dedicating her life to children who had no one else. Darius inhabited a sprawling estate with manicured gardens, overseeing a tech empire that employed thousands. Yet they found common ground in their dedication to Theo, in their shared love of old bookstores, and in conversations that stretched into the night about everything from childhood dreams to global poverty. One evening, after Theo had fallen asleep during movie night at Nora's apartment, Darius gently carried him to the guest bedroom. When he returned, he sat closer to Nora than before, his fingers lightly brushing hers. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," he said quietly. "After Julian and Clara died, I shut down everything except work and caring for Theo." Nora felt her heart quicken. "And how do you feel now?" "Like I've found something I didn't know I was missing." His fingers interlaced with hers. "Someone." Their first kiss was tentative, sweet, and over too quickly. Nora pulled back, conflicting emotions warring within her. "What's wrong?" Darius asked. "This is complicated," she said. "My clients, the children I work with, they need stability, consistency. I can't just—" She gestured vaguely. "And your world is so different from mine. Does that matter?" he asked. "It might." She looked away. "I grew up with nothing, Darius. I know what it's like when people from different worlds try to bridge that gap. Sometimes the bridge collapses." Before he could respond, Nora's phone rang, an emergency with one of her cases. As she took the call, Darius gathered a sleepy Theo, promising they'd talk more soon. But the conversation was derailed the following week when Nora attended a charity gala at Darius's insistence. She felt out of place in her only formal dress, a simple blue number she'd worn to her college graduation. The whispers followed her through the ballroom. "That's Darius Harding's new project. I heard she's just the help. The boy's nanny or something. Probably after his money. These charity types always are." When she overheard Darius's business associate Vivian Reynolds say, "Darling, she's sweet, but hardly your caliber." "What would your mother say?" Nora fled to the garden terrace. Darius found her there, staring at the city lights below. "Don't let them get to you," he said softly. "They don't matter." "But they do," Nora replied. "That's your world, Darius. Those people, those expectations. No, they're just people I do business with. My world is Theo, and now, hopefully you." She turned to face him. "There's something I need to ask you. Something that's been bothering me." She took a deep breath. "The night Theo got lost, you said your housekeeper was watching him, but Theo told me he was looking for you when he got lost. That you'd been gone for days." Darius's expression tightened. "It's complicated." "That's not an answer." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I wasn't at a board meeting. I was at a private addiction treatment center. I've been struggling since Julian died. Painkillers first, then alcohol. I've been clean for 7 months, but I had a close call and checked myself in for a few days. I didn't want you to know." His voice dropped. "I didn't want you to think I couldn't take care of Theo." The confession hung between them, heavy with implications. Nora thought of her own parents, how addiction had destroyed their ability to care for her, leading to her childhood in foster care. "Why tell me now?" she asked quietly. "Because I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "And love doesn't work without honesty." Breaking Point's autumn brought crisp air and changing leaves, but also mounting tensions. Nora struggled to reconcile her growing feelings for Darius with her concerns about his past addiction and the vastly different worlds they inhabited. Meanwhile, Darius juggled the demands of his company with caring for Theo and pursuing a relationship with a woman who kept one foot firmly outside his door. Things came to a head when Darius proposed a solution that seemed perfect to him. Nora should quit her job at Riverside Children's Services and head a new foundation he wanted to create, dedicated to improving foster care and adoption services. "You'd have unlimited resources," he explained enthusiastically one evening at his home. "You could implement all the programs you've talked about, help hundreds more children than you can now." Nora stared at him, her tea growing cold in her hands. "You want me to quit my job?" "I want you to have the impact I know you've dreamed about," he said. "You're wasted dealing with bureaucracy and budget cuts." "Wasted?" The word stung. "That wasted work has helped dozens of children find permanent homes." and you could help hundreds more with proper funding. It's not about the numbers, Darius. It's about being in the trenches doing the hard daily work. She set down her cup carefully. And frankly, it feels like you're trying to buy me. His expression darkened. That's not fair. I'm trying to support your passion. By taking me away from the work that matters to me? By making me dependent on your money? She stood up. Do you even understand why I do this work? Of course I do, he said. You care about these children. It's more than that. When I was 8, a social worker named Helen Griffith saved my life. She was the first person who ever made me feel like I mattered, like my future was worth fighting for. I do this work because I want to be that person for other children. Not from some gleaming office, but right there beside them in their darkest moments. The argument escalated, old wounds and new fears colliding. When Darius suggested that perhaps her resistance stemmed from fear of success rather than principle, Nora grabbed her coat and left. For a week, they didn't speak. Nora threw herself into her work, staying late at the office and taking on extra cases. Darius sent flowers, which she donated to the hospital. He left voicemails she couldn't bring herself to return. Then one rainy evening, so similar to the night she'd found Theo, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find not Darius, but Theo, holding his uncle's hand. The boy looked up at her with solemn eyes. Uncle Dari is sad, he announced. And I miss your pancakes. Despite herself, Nora smiled. She looked at Darius, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the humility in his stance. May we come in? He asked quietly. Please? She stepped aside, allowing them entry. Theo immediately went to check on the goldfish they'd bought for her apartment, leaving the adults in uncomfortable silence. I was wrong, Darius said finally. I thought I was helping, but I was trying to reshape your life to fit my expectations. Just like my father always did to me. He swallowed hard. The truth is, I admire what you do exactly as you do it. Your hands-on work, your dedication despite the low pay and long hours, it's who you are, and it's who I fell in love with. Nora felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. And I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid of depending on someone else, afraid of losing myself in your world, afraid that your past struggles might... She couldn't finish the thought. Might mirror your parents, he completed for her. I understand that fear. All I can offer is honesty and the promise that I'm committed to my sobriety. For Theo, for myself, and for any future we might build. He reached for her hand tentatively. I don't want to change you, Nora. I just want to be part of your life, however that looks. Bridges Built Spring arrived with a burst of renewal, mirroring the fresh start taking shape in Nora's life. After months of careful rebuilding, she and Darius had found a rhythm that honored both their worlds rather than forcing either to abandon theirs. Nora remained at Riverside Children's Services, her dedication to hands-on work unwavering, but she'd also begun consulting part-time for the Harding Family Foundation, not as its director but as an advisor helping shape programs that supported foster youth. The foundation funded projects she'd dreamed about for years. Emergency housing for displaced teens, education grants for foster children, training programs for foster parents. Darius, meanwhile, had restructured his company to require less of his personal time, delegating responsibilities so he could be more present for Theo and build a life that included Nora. He'd also become surprisingly involved in her world, volunteering alongside her at weekend events and getting to know the families she worked with. The divide between their worlds hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still awkward moments at corporate functions, still times when their different backgrounds created misunderstandings. But they'd learned to bridge these gaps with patience, humor, and the deep love that had grown between them. On a perfect June evening, they gathered with friends to celebrate the opening of Evergreen Heights' first dedicated youth center, a joint project between the city, Riverside Services, and the Harding Foundation. The renovated building featured counseling offices, emergency housing units, recreation spaces, and a rooftop garden. As twilight settled over the celebration, Nora found herself standing on that rooftop, watching Theo help younger children plant tomato seedlings in raised beds. Darius appeared beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. She leaned against him, smiling. "I was just thinking about that rainy night when I found Theo. How one small decision can change everything." "The best decision I never made," Darius murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "What do you mean?" "Theo running away, it was the worst day of my life. But it led him to you, which led me to you." He turned to face her fully, and that changed everything. As children laughed around them and the garden bloomed with possibility, Darius took her hands in his. Theo appeared suddenly at their side, grinning with conspiratorial delight. "Remember what we practiced?" "Uncle Dari," the boy whispered loudly. Darius knelt down, not just to Theo's level, but to one knee before Nora. From his pocket, he produced not a jeweler's box, as she might have expected, but a small, worn key. "This is the key to the Blue House on Maple Street," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "The one with the garden you loved and the big windows for morning light. I bought it last month. Not for me, but for us. If you want it, if you want us," Nora's eyes widened. The house he described was one they'd walked past months ago, a modest but beautiful home she'd admired for its charm and warmth, so different from his grand estate. "You'd leave your family home?" she asked, disbelieving. "That house was never a home," he replied. "Not really. It's where I grew up, but it's full of shadows. I want to build something new with you, something that belongs to both of us." Theo bounced on his toes. "And I get the bedroom with the tree outside the window?" he added, unable to contain his excitement. Nora laughed through her tears, the sound pure and bright against the evening air. "You've already planned it all out, haven't you?" "Only if you say yes," Darius said. "To the house, to us becoming a family, to building a life together. Different worlds finding common ground." She looked around the rooftop garden they'd created together, this perfect blend of her vision and his resources, this bridge between what was and what could be. "Yes," she said simply, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "To all of it, yes." As they embraced, Theo wrapping his arms around both their legs in celebration, Nora thought about the storms that had brought them together and the ones they'd weathered since. Some might see their love as unlikely, the wealthy businessman and the dedicated social worker from such different beginnings. But standing there with the family they'd built, she knew some bridges were meant to last forever. Throughout that summer, they created their home together, a place neither too grand nor too modest, filled with photographs of Theo and children from Nora's programs, with books and art and the warmth of belonging. And above the fireplace hung a small framed drawing, a child's rendering of a house with a blue door, 3 stick figures holding hands in front, and the words "Our Family" written in a 6-year-old's careful print. Sometimes rescuing a child means finding your own heart. And sometimes the greatest bridges are built not despite our differences, but because of them, each person bringing their own strength until something beautiful and unexpected spans the gap between separate worlds.